An explosive hour here on Sky News with our political editor, Beth Rigby, and of course the three candidates vying to replace Nicola Sturgeon at the top of the SNP, and of course replacing her as Scotland's First Minister. Let's get some instant reaction from four people here in the studio with us. We've got Bailey Lee Robb, who is representing the Ash Regan campaign, Michelle Thompson from the Kate Forbes camp, Neil Gray from Humza Yousaf's team, and an impartial voice, Professor Nicola McEwen from the University of Edinburgh. Professor McEwen, first of all, to you, who won?
Oh, I'm not going to judge that. What I would say is that you mentioned explosive, and I think it was a lot more explosive than I had thought it would be after the softer tone to the previous leaders' debate. And that's a real challenge, a real problem for the SNP in a sense, because it gives the impression of a party that is divided, and voters generally don't like divided parties. It's entirely appropriate that choosing a new leader leads to a robust exchange over the direction of travel for the party, appropriate for the voters, the public, to see that, since it's their First Minister too. But whoever emerges from this as the winner will have a massive job on their hands to reunite the party.
Neil Gray, was that not a mudslinging match that the SNP has been trying to avoid over the course of the last couple of weeks?
I think it was a robust exchange of views, and I think we're all united on the panel and in this leadership contest around the desire, the need for Scottish independence. I think what divides us is the route by which we get there and the vision for our government going forward. Humza set out a very compelling and strong case for why it's important that we maintain that progressive platform that has taken us to unprecedented levels of support under Nicola Sturgeon. 8 election wins in a row in 8 years. Humza's looking to maintain that and build upon it in order to build a team that can take us over the tipping point for independence.
Michelle Thompson, that was not a display of party unity at all, was it?
Well, it wasn't meant to be a display of party unity. What it was meant to be for each of the candidates to put their credentials front and centre and set out how exactly they would lead the SNP going forward. And in that respect, having looked at social media after the debate until now, it's utterly clear that Kate Forbes won it hands down.
Bailey Lee, that, I'm assuming, is something you would not agree with, but your candidate in this race was, the economic policy was drilled down, and it exposed big holes, didn't it, in Ash Regan's plans?
Well, I mean, coming in there, I think both candidates did a great performance, but I think Ash Regan won hands down. Clearly, Ash is the only one that has put forward a plan for independence, and you've said there that her economic policy was put to test, and absolutely, that is what this whole debate was about.
She didn't know the institutions that would be required to set up that central bank.
Well, she did. She had named a few institutions outright there with Beth Rigby. But what is fundamental, and what Ms Regan and other candidates have said throughout this whole process, is that the shortened election period prevents candidates from putting forward a full policy platform. So whilst we would love to outline all our policies in depth, in detail, fully costed, fully planned, we're unable to do so because of this short election.
Michelle Thompson, the reality is here, is it not, that this is a two-horse race and you need to get Ash Regan's votes on side in order to win this, don't you?
We don't need to. I believe Kate will win. I think she's utterly the strongest candidate. The areas where she's doing really well, if we look at the polls, which I know Professor McEwen is an expert in, but all the polls show us that with the general public, in terms of net favourability ratings, she is ahead of the pack. She's ahead of the pack because she understands about the need for change. Her statement, continuity won't cut it, is really cutting through. She understands about the economics and the finance that means that she can properly start to address the cost of living crisis. So she, I believe, is going to win.
And Neil Gray, that's the problem, isn't it? There's panic within your team that Kate Forbes could win this. That's the reality.
No, there's not. We have set out a very measured campaign. We've had a very successful campaign. The poll that you have published today demonstrates that Humza Yousaf is ahead, quite substantially ahead, amongst SNP voters, both those that voted in 2019 and those that are would wish to vote in the next Holyrood election. So Humza has gone from a position of being behind Kate Forbes amongst SNP voters and in the general public. He's he's quadrupled his support amongst the general public, and he is substantially ahead. Regardless of which measure you use for SNP support, he is now 19 points ahead in one and 14 points ahead in the other.
Professor McEwen, it was interesting, wasn't it, to hear the candidates pivoting to essentially two different audiences. Did you get the sense that Humza Yousaf was speaking directly to SNP voters, whereas Kate Forbes was looking at the broader church here and trying to appeal and take advantage of what the polls are saying, that she appeals to that broader audience?
I think they're probably doing both of those things, but also playing to their strengths. But the reality is that the public don't decide this leadership election. SNP voters don't even decide this leadership election. It's the members that matter. And what we don't know is, well, we know that the SNP has a very large membership. We don't know how many of them will participate in this election. We have a little bit of an inkling as to the values and attitudes of the SNP membership from a survey a few years ago, and that would suggest that they would perhaps lean more towards Humza, but we don't know how much they will value the attitudes, the social issues, the conservative issues, as opposed to the competence issues. Who do they believe would be most competent to lead the SNP?
Michelle Thompson, you issued a fairly explosive, to use that phrase again, statement over the weekend when there was that intervention by the Deputy First Minister, John Swinney, to back Neil Gray's candidate in the race here, Humza Yousaf. Do you believe that this contest is rigged in favour of Humza Yousaf from Party HQ?
I absolutely don't believe it is rigged in favour. I was merely commenting the fact that I personally believe it's not appropriate for the Deputy First Minister to seek to use his influence to try and persuade people to vote for one candidate.
Why not? He's a member like everyone else.
Because he holds a position of great power, and I thought he should have taken exactly the same view and the entirely appropriate position of the First Minister as a Deputy First Minister.
And I'm also making... inappropriate.
It's absolutely not. John has got one vote the same way as everybody else does in the party, but he obviously also has great standing within the party. John has dedicated 40 years of service to the SNP and to the people of Scotland. His judgment is absolutely well respected across the party because of that length of service, and he has been able to see at close hand the three candidates that are put before us in this election. He has decided that his values and his judgment aligns closest to Humza Yousaf, and that's why he's given him his endorsement. It is a ringing endorsement and one I absolutely celebrate.
But is it fair to say that Party HQ wants Humza to win?
I've no idea what Party HQ wants to do. We've got no involvement from party headquarters. They're here merely to administrate the process, not to get involved in the campaign, and anyone suggesting otherwise is playing in conspiracy theories.
Bailey Lee, the reality here is that Ash Regan is not going to win this, is she?
Well, I wouldn't agree with that statement at all. I mean, Ash is the only one that can gain from this. I mean, you were speaking polls. Ash started away down, I think, at 4%. We're now up at 14, 15%. The polls are showing that Ash will only continue to go upwards. So Ash is the one here that has everything to gain, and I absolutely believe that she has the potential to win this and become Scotland's next First Minister. And what a great First Minister she would be, and it would be the last First Minister that we'd have under this devolution settlement.
Neil Gray, is Ash credible?
Ash has set out her campaign as she's seen fit. She's obviously picking up support from it. But I firmly believe that Humza Yousaf is the candidate that will ensure that we maintain our progressive platform, that we maintain the popular support that we have earned and re-earned under the stewardship of Nicola Sturgeon.
Is Ash Regan credible?
Well, I think she has a credible platform that she's seeking to put forward. But I believe that the most credible platform is the one that's been put forward by Humza Yousaf. That will ensure that we do not lose the popular support that we have earned. We've got to re-earn that trust of the people of Scotland, not just for the SNP, but for the cause of independence. And I believe Humza Yousaf is the best set to ensure that he can persuade the people of Scotland to take us beyond the point of independence. No, well, the polls show that amongst independent...
We're almost running out of time.
Independent supporters,
you've said that,
Humza Yousaf is in front.
We've heard that during the debate. Nicola McEwen, how does whoever wins this contest unite a party?
Well, it's very difficult, but I think that the SNP has proven itself over the last number of years to be a formidable electoral machine, and it will have to try to ensure that that all kicks into gear again, because there's not very much time before the next big electoral test of the general election. Now, if Kate does emerge as the winning candidate, then she has the additional challenge of not really being supported by most of the senior figures within the SNP, within the Scottish Government. So that's an additional challenge for her. But whoever emerges will have to try to unite again.
Just a final thought on that, Michelle Thompson, that's the reality. Kate Forbes is alienated in this race, and who would serve in her cabinet?
Absolutely not. You have to understand, this is a competition. People are setting out their stalls. I am absolutely confident that when Kate wins, people will be clambering to serve in her government and take Scotland the next stage in its journey to independence.
Would you serve in a Kate Forbes cabinet, Neil Gray?
I've always be looking to ensure I serve the people on the credible mandate that has been given to us, to the people of Scotland, which is a progressive agenda. And I would be seeking to ensure that Humza Yousaf is the First Minister, that can maintain that progressive mandate, that can ensure we not just win the next election, but win our independence. And regardless of who's First Minister, though I believe it will be Humza, of course I'd have a conversation about how we make sure we have a progressive mandate delivered to the people of Scotland.
Bailey Lee, final thought from you. What do you make of what you've heard from everyone else in the panel?
I think it's funny because what has been set out there is that accordingly that Humza is the only one that will continue the SNP under a progressive party. That is ludicrous. The party is progressive. The party itself is progressive, not just one individual. It's not to say that just because Nicola Sturgeon is leaving that the progressiveness goes if Humza doesn't win. Each candidate has set out their stall. I believe that Ash Regan has set out the best stall. Ash is going to be the one that continues that progressive vision for Scotland. Ash will take us to that independence. I'm clear on that.
OK, Bailey Lee, Rob from the Ash Regan camp, Michelle Thompson from Kate Forbes, Neil Gray from Humza Yousaf and Professor Nicola McHugh. Thanks very much for your time on Sky News. And that is it from the outskirts of Edinburgh this evening. Lots to mull over as this contest continues for another few weeks when the winner will eventually be crowned on the 27th of March.